If you want to support the Stop Killing Games initiative, the UK petition expires on the 14th of this month and needs 100,000 signatures. The European Citizens Initiative needs 1 million and finishes at the end of this month. Getting these passed will get the ball rolling with regards to discussing how we can better preserve games indefinitely. The current situation is this: when a game is no longer profitable, developer support for it is typically pulled, which can render the games unplayable. The initiative proposes that games should be made with an end-of-life plan for how they can still remain playable after this happens, and that when you buy the game, you're aware of that end-of-life plan. That way we know what happens to our purchase once the developers move on from them. Because right now, you buy a game and hope that it's supported until you no longer want to play it anymore. You're at their mercy. I like what the initiative is trying to do. I like preserving history, and it saddens me to think that game experiences are lost forever, simply because they're no longer supported by their creators. And I don't think it's right to dismiss the Stop Killing Games initiative as being naive or impossible to implement. But getting this petition passed is just the first of many steps on a very long and difficult road towards the goal of preserving video games. Which is fine, because it's better than the current situation where we have nothing. It took me a while to get my head around the initiative's proposals, so I'll try to sum up some of the situations in this video because that helped me to understand it better. Now, single-player games should be easier to preserve. You just provide the self-contained downloadable files on a service like, say, GOG, remove whatever online checks are currently required to have them run, and there you have it. Future-proof games, fully operational to store and to play offline forever. But what about multiplayer games? Well, that's where it gets more complicated, because end-of-life support isn't just about letting the player base host their own servers to play on. Because for some games to work, they require costly or fiddly third-party licenses and stuff I don't really understand. But put it simply, the Stop Killing Games initiative is kind of unworkable with a lot of current games, due to the way that they're made. Hence why the Stop Killing Games initiative wants to start a discussion to establish a workable approach moving forward, built into how future games are developed, from an early stage of development. It doesn't have the answers to all of the many complicated challenges of allowing a multiplayer game to continue without developer support. The initiative merely wants to start a discussion about it. The dream is for all future games to remain at least sort of playable forevermore, which you can imagine would become difficult for games built around a multiplayer focus. I guess it would mean that you'd sometimes be the only person in an MMO world, or you could just simply run about in empty deathmatch maps in a first-person shooter game. I like to do this already from time to time. I like nostalgia, and I like the idea that I could get my friends together to play those games again sometime. I mean, I never do, but it's nice to know that the option's there. Someone's mowing their lawn. Christ, it's hot. But yeah, games don't need to be dead forever. You could populate the game's worlds with AI-driven bots eventually, pretending to be other players. And this isn't a far-fetched proposal. Counter-Strike 2's full of them already. So yeah, there's definitely value to preserving games forever, because who knows what future tech will be able to do with them. There have already been cases of games like The Crew going down and becoming unplayable, and I've loved listening to the nuances in the discussion about that game and its cancellation. Like how there were sequels to it, and there were apparently licenses expiring for various aspects inside the game, and the player base was very small for the game that was shut down, but then it was still being sold for £26 just months before the servers were shut down, which is kind of disgusting. And also, it no longer exists. It's gone forever. And that's a problem. Another example is Marvel Heroes, which was cancelled sooner than promised, and all of the staff got let go without pay and benefits. Pretty horrible end of life with that game. But it's also an example of a game where the player base has attempted to re-release it. I sure hope Disney doesn't have a problem with that. Remember Concord? Nah. That game shut down 2 weeks after release, and everybody was refunded. So all things considered, given the whole thing was a horrible mess that nobody wanted, and I'm not just talking about the game here, Sony did the right thing by refunding everybody, swallowing a loss of hundreds of millions of dollars from the entire project. What about Overwatch? It was replaced by a sequel, but what about the people who still played for the original? They've got no option but to play another game instead. Overwatch 2. Come to think of it, Counter-Strike 2's gone the same way. It lacks many of the game modes and maps that CSGO used to support, and that game has now been replaced. It's still playable, but it's been relegated to Steam's beta feature, and who knows how long it'll remain there for. I imagine that if this Stop Killing Games initiative passes, some developers will get sneaky with the definition of remaining playable. Does a working main menu count as a playable game? A tutorial segment? What about just the first area of the game? So I can see a lot of difficult wiggling going on in this area, because what is acceptable and what isn't, for a game to be considered playable, kind of needs deciding on a per-game basis. So that's a discussion for a future time. Now, I understand that developing a game is hard. Your focus at the time is just on finishing it and getting it out the door, and that its end of life couldn't be further from your thoughts until after the game's released. Because why would it be? I'd like to think that anything you release would be something you'd want to preserve for as long as possible, and that it would be great to have a player base keen enough to help support it forevermore, and long after you've moved on to other things. But for now, let's say that a game should announce how long it should be supported for, at the very least, and see what happens afterwards. So there are many aspects of preservation that need to be discussed and outlined at some point in this process. But for now, let's just work on getting the ball rolling, and the discussion about this started. This whole initiative will be measured in degrees of success, where anything is better than what we have right now. I mean, even if it helps just one more game become playable after its servers are shut down, then that's a positive, right? I've seen games becoming increasingly vague as a concept and as an asset. They've gone, or are going, from being physical items you can purchase to being digital downloads or subscriptions. They are becoming less permanent and physical in their nature. I question even if I own my games anymore. Take Steam, for instance. The idea of that service going down is unthinkable, and I remember early on them vaguely saying that they had plans should it ever happen, but we're not told what those plans are. So why not tell us those plans? Why do we have to wait for it all to go tits up before we see what they have up their sleeve? If anything at all. You know what? I'm liking this initiative more and more. So yeah, sign the petition or see these videos for more information. Designer Dave provides a very short and concise overview of the entire situation, and Ross goes into more depth in this video about the whole thing. And the links to the petition are in this video's description.